So, welcome everyone. My name is Shawnee McElwain. I am here in Washington, D.C. I serve on the More Light Presbyterians board. We started More Light Mondays a few months ago to just have space for dialogue and conversation and ask curious questions and try to educate and enlighten and offer a space as brave as possible. I no longer use words like safe because safety is relative, but brave enough that we can have these hard, thoughtful conversations in a space that offers curiosity and welcome. At More Light, we understand inclusion through an intersectional lens. LGBTQIA plus justice is connected to racial justice, economic justice, disability justice, and gender justice. And our educational work helps communities recognize those connections so that belonging is not conditional or partial, but holistic. And everybody feels like they are included in the beloved community of God. So, with that being said, I'm going to go to my notes because I forgot what I was. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to pass it back over to the co facilitator tonight, our director of operations.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jessie Littlejohn. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Director of Operations for More Light. And before we dive into our topic of this evening, I'm just going to open us in a word of prayer. Shawnee already kind of laid the foundation for who we are and what we're doing, but I just want to ground our time with the inspiration and protection and wisdom of the Holy Spirit. So please pray with me. Holy wisdom, holy word, holy grace, holy creator, holy inspiration, divine love, we give you thanks for the ways that you bring us together in these virtual spaces and the ways that you continue to move through us and with us in this thing that we call church. We ask that you continue to allow us to do this work in a way that is meaningful and true and that brings glory to what it is that you call your creation so that we may be a reflection of who it is that you have called us to be, the divine image of you. God, we ask that you bless our time together, inspire what needs to be inspired, bring creativity and curiosity where there is stagnation. And we ask that we can meet one another with respect and kindness, and that we be challenged and comforted in ways that we didn't know we needed. We ask all of these things in your holy name. Amen. So this evening, you came because this is the road to GA. There's a lot of stuff coming. Um, if you don't know what General Assembly is, I'm glad that you came anyway and that you just wanted to be a part of the More Light Monday conversation. But we this evening are talking about General Assembly. And for those who don't know, General Assembly is something that we do as a denomination every 2 years where the body gathers together, and the world's biggest and most tedious session meeting ever. It is wonderfully polity filled, and we do this incredible work as a body for the good of the whole. And it is nerdy, and it is ridiculous, and it is fun, and it is agonizing, and it is all of the things and above. And you either love it or you don't. And I'm somebody who actually genuinely loves it. So, and I know that there are other GA nerds that are in this call that also have similar feelings, and I'm thankful that they are here. So what our kind of format for this evening is we're going to kind of go through the overtures that are coming to GA that are directly, specifically impacting the LGBT community. As Shawnee mentioned, we believe that our work is intersectional. Everything that is coming to GA will impact the LGBTQIA community in some capacity or another. And we are not separated from it or siloed by it or anything of this sort. But these specific overtures directly impact the LGBTQIA community. And so we wanted to give voice to them. Some of them, More Light is actually specifically named in. And so we want to acknowledge that as well. I know many of you probably came to speak about or hear about the polyamory monogamy amendment or overture that's coming, and we will talk about that. But we did also want to give voice to some of the other things so that you are as informed as you can be around some of these issues. I also want to acknowledge at least 3 people in the room that we invited into this space that I know are here. So I don't know if everybody's here, but I wanted to welcome Ashley DeTarbert, who is a pastor within the PCUSA and a former More Light board member. She's also a member of ACWI, which is the advocacy committee for LGBTQIA people within our denomination, and she's here to be able to speak to some of the overtures that ACWI is bringing to GA. Reverend Bethany Benz Whittington is a stated clerk, and she's on the West Coast, but she's serving another presbytery that it's escaping me right now, but she can speak to that at a different time, or she can speak to it when she starts to speak. And she's going to kind of give some of the polity overture around some of the more complicated overtures that are coming specifically around the polygamy or not polygamy, polyamory and monogamy overture. And then Emily Bruno is also here, and she actually saw our polyamory statement and offered to give some testimony if it arises and if it is needed. She's a candidate for ordination and ready to receive a call. And she also has a law degree. So she's coming at this from multiple perspectives. So we give thanks for all 3 of you. And Ashley, I see that your hand is raised.
Yeah, I would also like to acknowledge my colleague on ACWI,
Yeah.
David Alonzo, who is also here and did some amazing work. Like I don't know how many overtures David helped write. So he's an excellent colleague, excellent resource. I just wanted to make sure he was acknowledged in
Awesome.
the space as well.
Yes. Yes, thank you, David, for being here as well and representing ACWI. So we'll call on all 3 of you, all 4 of you, as you feel necessary. Emily, I know that you said you would pop in during question and answer. So we're going to just jump right in. And I know that Ashley and David, while they're not necessarily on AC Swap, have offered in some capacity, since there is some overlap around concurrences and whatnot, to sort of give voice to some of those issues as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share my screen so you can kind of see everything. Please know that what's coming on the screen and what you're going to see is kind of the full overture. You don't need to read everything, and I'm not going to say everything that's on the screen, but everything that you need, and if Claudia or Shawnee can put this in the chat, everything for every overture is at pcbiz.org. So you have the full capacity as a member of this denomination to go look up what's happening within the General Assembly, and that will be coming before you. So as much as we want to help you do the work, it's also part of your responsibility to do some of that yourself. But we're going to make it as easy for you as possible. So the breakdown of this for us tonight, we're going to go over some of the overtures that we're in favor of, and we're going to go over some of the overtures that More Light is opposed to. And the first one that we're bringing up is the Gen 08, which is the creation of a voluntary self-audit process on LGBTQIA welcome, which was brought by ACWI, the Advocacy Committee. And this essentially is, I believe, Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, this came out of the national gathering in 2025, but also a need before that as well. For congregations within the denomination to be able to do an audit of how welcoming they are being to the LGBTQIA community, congregation, mid-councils, camps, conferences, to be able to develop something that actually is comprehensive and gets us thinking about what it is to be radically hospitable. So if David or Ashley want to speak to this, that would be awesome. Either one can pop in.
David, you wrote this one, I think, in particular, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
I'm going to
It
let you
was
speak to it.
inspired. I used to be. you
Oh,
hear me now?
now we can hear you.
Okay. I used to be the chair of Glisten Greater Kansas City, and when I heard someone ask at the queer gathering, uh, asking for a congregation is, I thought of right then, I thought of the rubric that Glisten uses to measure how well a school is welcoming to students. And so that's where the idea came from. And we did talk to Glisten and they did give their permission. We're not going to use it, obviously, exactly like it is. Or I even wrote a mock up of one, and we won't use that one exactly as it is either. We were kind of guinea pigs at my church with our session, and as they read through the way I wrote it to start with, it was just too burdensome. So I'm going to be looking for help from everyone else on how to simplify it.
Cool. Um, Between you and Ashley, do you have, I know you said you started sort of like bringing it together. Do you have an idea of what are some things that it might look like and questions that it might ask,
But,
just for the sake of like people having an idea?
um, we want to emphasize welcome of transgender people. We want to emphasize intersectionality of identities. And there was one other thing, and I don't have it in front of me, so I don't remember what the other thing was. But questions having to do with those subjects.
Awesome. I think from a More Light perspective, the idea that we are a denomination and a group of people that are reformed and always reforming. This is a process that allows us to hold up a reflection of what we're doing and what we could be doing better. Even the congregations that call themselves progressive and radically welcoming and hospitable still have things that they need to do that may not be welcoming and hospitable. And so we're constantly looking at the how do we grow? How do we improve so that everyone may flourish and everyone may find that liberation that God intends for all of us. And so we wholeheartedly put our support behind this. And however More Light can be helpful in the process to ACWI, we would like to do that. So yes, this has our seal of approval for sure. And please, for the right now, if you have questions, please make sure you write them down. We're going to come back to everything. But we, again, are going to keep the questions at the end so we can turn off the recording. But this is just sort of so everybody can get the information up front. The next one that we want to talk about, I don't believe came from any particular advocacy committee here, but this is an acknowledgement of the denomination's complicity in the HIV/AIDS crisis, specifically with regard to how queer people, particularly gay men, were treated during the AIDS crisis, and to confess and repent as the church for our actions and lack of responsibility and accountability during that time period, and the way that that has continued to impact the HIV people who are living with HIV and AIDS in our denomination and as a whole. The second part of this actually will lead into the next overture that we're going to talk about, which is to look at a comprehensive theological framework regarding homosexuality and relationships in contemporary contexts. And so this, as a denomination, we have issued apologies and had taken responsibility for past harms that we have done and been complicit in. This is an appropriate action that we believe the denomination should take, and that we were actually, as More Light, consulted on this overture. It was brought to our attention. We helped craft some of the language as well that went into it. And so, once again, this has our wholehearted approval, and will actually lead into our next overture that I think is probably the one that we want to give the most attention to, which is Gen 09, which is the Comprehensive Theological Framework on Sexuality, Relationships, and Family. This is being brought by AC SWAP, but I know ACWI also provided concurrence for it. And so this, I'm going to just read the language because it's good. And I think if you have time to go on to PCBiz and to read the full overture as well as the rationale, this is meant to fund and develop a comprehensive theological framework document and study that guides and addresses human sexuality and gender, which would reflect and support the denomination's commitment to full inclusion of all people, and which would help the PCUSA live into that commitment more fully. The directive is to fund and develop a comprehensive theological, biblical, and ethical framework and study guide that addresses the nature, purpose, and gift of flourishing, life-giving relationships, and then to fund and develop a policy and study guide on the Christian vocation of family. And so what this is actually going to do, from my understanding and my read of the overture, is to take a look at what it means to be human and what it means to be family, and to say this is bigger than what is prescribed by a very narrow lens. And I'm not saying that very well, so I'm going to allow people who were involved with this to say it better. So Ashley or David, if you would like to speak to this, I would love that, because my brain is not working properly.
David, would you like to go or would you like me?
You go ahead.
Sure. So yeah, looking at this particular overture, we had a couple of things come up. One is a recognition that we as a denomination we love a study. We love research, we love a study, but we haven't really done something that actually, as Jesse put it, like looks at the depth of what it means to be humans in relationship with one another, on a familial level, on a romantic or sexual relationship level, on all of those things. And since the last time anything like this has occurred, which it hasn't like, I think that was the Changing Families, a lot has happened. And we have a greater openness and understanding of what it means to be family to one another, to be in relationship with one another. And there's a lot for us to learn and to talk about and to acknowledge. And so this felt really, really important to us. In addition to that, there are also a lot of other overtures that are trying to get at things from ways that are misguided, are being done in bad faith, that are not using proper definitions, that don't understand realities of the church and the people within it and the society that we live in and the relationships that we're in, that this actually feels like a response to. And so this to us felt extremely important. We recognized pretty quickly how much use there could be in this existing and in having the proper people be a part of it, to make sure that it is actually something that is reflective of the body of Christ and that is helpful to the church and all the people in it.
Thank you so much. You said that much better than I did. So yeah, 100%. Like Ashley said, and this will come up again in a little bit, and Bethany, I know, also is going to name exactly what you just did, Ashley. This should in many ways be seen as sort of a response to some of the other overtures that are out there that are so poorly worded and misrepresentative and like miseducated around specific issues. What this overture seeks in many ways is to correct that, not intentionally as like you did this, so we're doing this. They believe that this came out of far before that overture came to the floor. But this is a much better alternative and response to what has already been out there. So again, this is something that More Light fully supports. Um, the next one, again, is another ACWI-sponsored overture that, for those of you who are not as familiar with the call process, there is, when you are a pastor or a teaching elder, or you are looking for a job within the denomination, you go onto the website, the CLC website, you put in all your information, the churches put all their information in, and algorithm works together and everything spits out information and tries to match you up with a church or a ministry that best suits you and you best suit it. As of right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley and David, there is no category that classifies anything related to LGBTQIA issues. And so part of what this overture is doing is saying we as a church would like to call somebody who is LGBT, or as an LGBT person, we would like to serve at an affirming church. And so there are some like pieces of churches that say that they're affirming that may not necessarily be as affirming as they think they are. So there are some like pieces that we have to think about, but this would move us in a step in a direction that we are nowhere at right now. So if Ashley or David, if you would like to speak to this, I would really appreciate it.
Okay, I can speak to it. Recently, we at my church, we've called a new pastor, and it was possible to include LGBT issues in in the document. However, you as a congregation had to do it on your own volition, because there's nothing in there guiding you to do that. What we wanted to do here is to actually put something into the application form so that a pastor candidate would know that a church is at least working on becoming more welcoming and affirming. So one suggestion was to just put a check mark in there, but we decided that that was not enough. So that's why we decided to talk about this and make this resolution to the GA. Did that help?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Bethany. And I see your hand raised as well. You're allowed to speak to it.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer that there is a precedent here as well, that that there already exists a checkbox in the CLC program for if you are open to serving a racial ethnic congregation. And that has existed for some number of years. So it's not without precedent to do this, and there's good reason, as we have heard from these brilliant colleagues, to do so.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for coming in with your clerk language of precedent and constitutionality. Like, I love a little nerdy polity drop in there. So yes, 100% we want to make the call process and the search process. It's agonizing as it is. One less thing to make it agonizing is a little bit better. And then I believe this is the last one that is coming before us that we are approved in. We are actually specifically named in this overture. I believe this is also something that came out of the National Gathering in 2025, which is a desire to have more gatherings, but not just necessarily that like we've slapped together, that we have to do all on our own. There's a lot of energy and a lot of effort and money that went into the 2025 National Gathering that was sponsored by the denomination, but it would be helpful if there was a little bit more investment. So Ashley, if you would like to speak to this, or David, whomever has the floor, you may go ahead.
Yeah, I can speak to this one. So November 2025, we had the first ever national queer gathering that had institutional backing. There have been different events in years past. There have been camps for LGBTQ candidates. All of those have come from outside organizations. All of those have gotten support from the outside, but this is the first time where folks from the denomination were actually able to come together. We actually met in Louisville in the building and were able to do some really amazing community work with the nomination's backing, along with Covenant and More Light, which is absolutely incredible and honestly a little embarrassing that it has taken this long for that to happen, particularly with the denomination that has so many statements, G after GA, in support of LGBTQ people. And we know there is a long precedent for this kind of event for other communities within the denomination. And we know that there is a precedent for this outside of getting denominational support. And after having this one event, which had a really great crowd of people, and I also know that there are people who didn't come because they weren't able to make the time, because they were unsure about coming to Louisville, because of a lot of different reasons. But there are so many more people who would love to come to another one of these. And the more we have, the more of a reputation it can get. The better we learn, the safer that they become, the more open that they can become, the more feedback can be gathered. But one of the number one pieces of feedback we got from the November one is that people want to do this again. We are in a time in which the powers that be seek to divide us. And so for there to be a gathering of queer unity within the PCUSA is absolutely vital, not just to the queer community, but to the PCUSA, because when we show up, when we are part of the church, we stay, we grow. People are afraid of the church dying, but so many people showed up, and there are people who are hungry for this, who want to do the work, who want to be in community together, and we need that financial support to help make this possible. We are asking for it every other year. So there's a little bit of space between that. It helps with the budgetary issues. It gives us something to do on the off years of GA. But this is something that is helpful and necessary and good, not just for the LGBTQIA community within the PCUSA, but for the denomination as a whole, because it helps strengthen it and can help it continue to grow at a time when we are so scared of everything getting smaller.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm not going to say anything else because you just gave a whole word. So I'm just going to let that stand. But these are the group of overtures that More Light is putting their seal of approval on. Please, again, go back into pcbiz.org and read through them. And I'll make sure that they're all listed by their overture name. Most of them are in the, if you go to the GEN section, most of these are in the gender and sexuality section. So you can they're all kind of grouped right there. You can find most of them all together, if that makes it a little bit easier. But the next section, I'm sure that is what most of you are waiting for, is the section of ones that we do not put our approval on. And that there are two that we are fully in opposition of. The first one is a special committee that wants to bring a task force to revisit amendments 24A and 24C that were approved of at the last General Assembly. 24A, if you remember, is the overture that added sexual orientation and gender identity to the Book of Order as classes that you are no longer allowed to discriminate against. And then 24C kind of brought into question that during your ordination exams, and whether both as a teaching elder, as a deacon, as a ruling elder, that you would live by and uphold that you would not discriminate against anybody that's listed within the Book of Order. So it kind of held that, but people want to bring it back and sort of do a task force. The other one, again, is what everybody's been talking about, which is the need for people to be monogamous, and for ministers of word and sacrament to be monogamous. So the first one is the 24A and C. And Bethany, I'm going to let you speak to both of these as much as you want, and you may say whatever you would like to say. We trust you. So Bethany, when you're ready, feel free to jump in.
Cool. Thanks, Jesse. So um, I want to offer a little bit more on what 24A and specifically 24C do. As Jesse said, 24A added sexual orientation and gender identity as two more categories of people that we in the PCUSA will not discriminate against. This is not just rhetoric. It's not a policy statement. It is in the Book of Order. That language went into the foundation section of the Book of Order. So it is part of our Constitution at this point. And then 24C goes to the examination period for candidates for, as Jesse said, ruling elder, deacon, or teaching elder, minister of word and sacrament. The question of 24C is essentially, will you uphold our standards of non-discrimination? The original overture that went to the General Assembly said, will you uphold our standards of non-discrimination? It was amended at the last General Assembly to add, will you uphold our standards of non-discrimination, and will you be committed to our foundation of God being Lord of the conscience? And what is so silly about having added that is that we do affirm fully that God is Lord of the conscience, that each individual Presbyterian has that right to their own freedom of conscience. And it may be that we determine that something that you believe, that you very sincerely believe God has led you to, is outside of what we, the body, have determined to be our theology, our ecclesiology. So that is part of the ordination question for 24C is will you, do you affirm that you're committed to non-discrimination, and do you affirm this whole section of the foundations, not just freedom of conscience, but this whole section of the foundations that says, I have freedom of conscience, and also I might actually be outside of what the body has determined is our theology. That piece gets missed a lot. We don't say everybody gets to do whatever. Because if we just said you have freedom of conscience, that we're not going to compel you to believe anything, then we would be a hot mess of, you put two Presbyterians in a room and you have 7 different opinions, right? Like we would be that, but on a nationwide scale. So we have also said that that the body determines together what our theology and our ecclesiology are. And it may be that we determine you are outside of that. We will not compel you. And this is some of the language of the overture. There's a fear that people are being compelled to believe things, and we are not in the business of compelling anyone to believe something. And it says so in the foundations, in the Book of Order, that we're not going to do that. We believe in theological diversity. And there are going to be times when we're going to say, get out. Too bad, so sad. See you later. It doesn't say it exactly like that. I would enjoy it if it did, but it doesn't. So this special committee is the language of it is just really harsh, and it says investigate harms, and I'm informally, there's a like we're going to be victims of these overtures or of these amendments to the Book of Order, which diminishes true victimhood. So like, let's not institutionalize that, please. The other, like one of the pieces of this that I think is important is that it has been less than a year, less than one full calendar year since these two amendments to the Book of Order have taken effect. There's no data. There's just not. And it's fear-based, essentially. We're fearful of being marginalized. We're fearful of being treated the way that we have always treated queer people. So let's study that. I don't, I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of grace for this, so that's why my language is as harsh as it is. Um, uh, so I want to also say that like creating task force costs money. And we just heard about some really amazing ways that the denomination could be spending its money. And why would we do this instead? So those are my polity thoughts and also my own personal ones.
I appreciate all of your thoughts. So for all the reasons that Bethany just named and so many more, More Light's sort of in the mindset of the majority of the assembly, the vast majority of the assembly in 2024 approved these overtures. They were ratified by the presbyteries of our denomination. It's a done deal, y'all. So why do we need to revisit them? That's not to say that we can't reform and be reforming, but like Bethany said, like it's been less than a year, and also, um, well, I'm gonna I'll be PC and just leave it at that. We'll let the words lie. So let's move on. We do not support this overture, so we're gonna move on to the next one. This is the biggie. Bethany is prepared. We called her in especially for this one. So Bethany, when you're ready, just go to town.
So I texted Jesse and Claudia earlier today, and I said, am I allowed to say that this is the stupidest overture since the one where they tried to make us not have a General Assembly over Mother's Day and Father's Day? And they said, yeah, sure, say whatever you want. So here we are. Um, this Oh, I'm so sorry. This overture is ridiculous, for many, many reasons, not the least of which is it equates polyamory with polygamy, which is wrong in so many ways. And as like a person who really appreciates words and like words mean things. And if you're gonna put those two things right next to each other and put an equal sign between them, like I'm gonna kick you. So that's where we are. Um, a couple of like from a polity perspective, the first is that um this one of the like parliamentary procedures you can do is to answer one overture with another. So my hope is that Gen '09, which is the study, will come up first in the plenary and will be approved. And that when this one comes up, that we can answer this one with that one. Because what that one will do is answer a lot of these questions that are coming up in this overture about polyamory and polygamy. Because we're throwing this at the General Assembly and we're not defining words, and that's a, a recipe for disaster. Because people are going to come in with preconceived notions about what these things are, and that's a really dangerous way of doing business. So my hope is that we will answer this one with Gen '09. This is me crossing my fingers. The second major, like really major problem with this one is that this spot in the Book of Order, G20503A, is that the right? I'm sorry, Jesse, I trust you. But I also want to make sure that it is like absolutely correct. Um, uh, where this is in the Book of Order, where they're wanting to put it, is under the definition of a validated ministry.
Mhm.
This is these are like what they're writing here are characteristics that they hope to see in a person engaging in ministry. And they've put it in the section and included it as a definition of a validated ministry. So the polity is just straight up bad, wrong, incorrect. Don't do that. Because what a validated ministry is, if you're not familiar, the way that we define it is serve a church pastor role, the job, a chaplain job, like the job itself is the validated ministry, not the person, but this is characteristics of a person. Like they did a bad job of writing where they think this should go. And like I could go on about that, but just the polity of it is bad for that reason. Um, it's also a bad polity because we're like defining what love is allowed to be. And on the one hand, we already do that in the Book of Order, where we say that marriage is between two people. And if you're going to do something like this, at least start there, right? Um, but to put things like what love is into our Constitution is wildly outside of the purpose of the Constitution itself. And it's also it's unbiblical. Um, and I don't think that this is what God is calling us to do. Um, and that's my personal thoughts. Again, Jesse, sorry. Because why would in our reformed and always being reformed by the movement of the Holy Spirit, why would the Spirit have moved us to have broader and more inclusive understandings of what love is, to then throw up a wall and say, but stop there. We've been doing good work for a long time, and this is it's more than a roadblock. It's a wrench in the gears. Let's not be those people who do things like that.
Thank you. So I'm going to remove your spotlight so you can, there you go. So those were the big ones that were coming. And we're going to move to the Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording.